Tiras slash Zandalar,
So
and,
basically,
work on behalf of your faction. That feels like
Shadowlands didn't happen.
Rumors that have been going around the community from sources, you know how it is, that there might be a new allied race introduced at some point in this expansion early
I'm
on.
not going
Is
to
that
give you
something you can
any
comment
answer
on?
about that.
We don't have
I'm asking about Tuscar. I'm asking about Tuscar. That's what I'm asking about. But it doesn't have to be. But I mean, it should be. But it doesn't have to be.
Do it, Ian.
That would be impossible to balance, though, right? Because I think if we let you play something that's just
They
so
balance
inherently...
perfectly. They've got a low center of gravity.
No, exactly. But no, that's like letting you play a Naru or play a Titan. Like, you can't just put, a supernatural power that's unstoppable alongside a mere orc or elf human.
Now,
hello and welcome. I hope I can be heard. Welcome to Twitter Spaces, and welcome to a developer Twitter space.
That was scary.
I wonder if I can be heard. I'm just going to check first before I say all the interesting things. I don't want to blow the interesting things, right? Before we know what's going on.
Bro, I thought Twitch heard me. They're trying to shut me down.
House? Is Steve Danusa in the house?
I am indeed, and I can hear you.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay, that's good. This is a really good start. We are in the future right here on Twitter Spaces, trying out a new thing to allow you, the World of Warcraft community, to get your questions to, two of the big boys in the World of Warcraft space. Ian Hazakostis and Steve Danusa. Can you say hello, boys?
Hello, everybody. Good to be here.
Yo, what up,
everybody?
Steve?
And yeah, this is a new Twitter adventure.
Yeah, it's awesome. So you'll be very pleased to know that these questions that we'll be handling today don't come from me. This is very much a kind of, rather than a sort of a YouTube interview or stream interview or something like that, this is very much a recreation of what a Blizz Q&A would be like, I guess, with me and hopefully Evertel in just a moment or two hosting and sort of presenting your questions that we've gathered from social media to the devs. The timing's not great with our childcare, so she's just gone off to get the little boy. So maybe you'll hear from him as well. I know that he's got some amazing questions to ask you.
Sorry, I wish I could make this bigger so you guys can read it.
World of Warcraft expansions, so it's super exciting. Just before we get started with any of these questions,
make this bigger.
I'd like to put something to you, Ian, and then Steve. If players haven't been playing Shadowlands, if it didn't really connect to them, maybe BFA didn't really connect with them either, why should they come back and play Dragonflight?
Good question,
Ian.
Very good question.
I think every WoW expansion is, in a lot of ways, a fresh start. It's a chance to reconnect, to be on a level playing field with everyone else who's venturing into a new space. And
yeah,
it's every expansion brings new themes, new adventures, new systems. But I think Dragonflight in particular, it's if there's something about World of Warcraft that captured your imagination years ago that you haven't felt was fulfilled in the last few years, I think this return to just core high fantasy exploration and discovering the story as you go, meeting interesting characters along the way. Everyone from new races of giants to, of course, the beloved Tuscar. And I know I'm just buttering you up here, but
wait, there are Tuscar in this expansion?
I've heard there are, and quite a few. Yeah, that is, it's a great chance to get back in and check it out. And if you've never played World of Warcraft before, and if for some reason you've ventured upon this Twitter space and are wondering what's going on here, it's also a great time. And I think try it out, judge it for what it is, and I and the team heartily believe that it'll be worth your while.
And Steve, what on the same theme, what opportunities do you feel that Dragonflight has brought for you as sort of a storyteller?
Oh, he misspoke.
You need to not let Ian answer questions first, because he literally consumes all the good bits and gives them to you. But yeah, he said it well. We've just been looking at this as like an opportunity to dive back into those classic fantasy themes
that's a good thing
made us all fall in love with games like this in the first place,
this is good.
Movies like this and stories like this, the things that inspire our imagination. Having this vast land to explore, you have these cool figures that feel powerful and awesome, and you get to delve into their stories, you get to adventure beside them. It was really just a chance for us to revisit some of these really classic and popular characters in the dragon aspects, and kind of see what's going on with them now. All the changes that happened during Cataclysm and other storylines they lead to this, and this chance to kind of recapture something for themselves, their legacy that they had left behind so long ago.
Makes
And
sense.
so those themes of exploration, rediscovery, of finding your legacy, those are all woven into the storylines that you'll be experiencing in Dragonflight.
Awesome. I want to do these questions from the community justice and make the most of this kind of platform that we're using here. So I'm going to kind of go through them at a bit of a lick, and I will ask you to sort of elaborate where it's sort of appropriate and what have you. And the first that I've got on my list here is quality of life changes when it comes to 10.0. Ian, can you describe how you've kind of taken lessons that you may have taken over the course of Shadowlands and how you're applying them for Dragonflight?
That's a really good question. Okay, I like that.
This is probably not a short answer. Because there's been a lot, right? And there's a lot of different pieces to it. Some of this really predates Shadowlands itself. I think, moving on from so-called borrowed power and saying that we're going to focus on evergreen systems like talents and professions, that was a decision that we made really before Shadowlands launched, right? Because we're kind of committing to the general feature slate of an expansion, pretty far in advance. And that was the realization and the feedback that walking away from borrowed power felt really bad. I think losing your artifacts, losing your Legion legendaries at the start of BFA, really got the expansion off on a really sour note.
Too true.
And I think over the course of BFA, we'd realized that everyone was looking at everything they were earning with the knowledge that it was all just fleeting and that it was all going to be gone, and that continued to sour the experience. And so even as we had committed to certain systems,
it's exactly how I feel.
We knew we wanted to take a different direction in Dragonflight. And then on the quality of life side, I think really a lot of what we discussed last year, a lot of what led to the changes in 9.15 that helped shape Eternity's End, like those are not end of expansion band-aids. That is an underlying philosophical shift in how we approach things like.
That's good. That's what I want to hear.
Valuing players' time, giving them the flexibility and freedom to play more of the game the way they want without feeling like they have to do things they don't enjoy to get at the bits they do enjoy, and really carrying that forward into crafting our systems.
They did that well with tier sets.
Alts and
now
and all
it's
of that
good.
Is going to work from the ground up in Dragonflight in a way that we frankly haven't done in expansions before.
I know we're very early on in the development of this
for PvP
expansion, but I mean, there will be people listening to that who want to draw like a lot of hope from it and go, yeah, that's awesome, but who will, naturally be a little bit kind of cynical about the intent behind it. Can you, even in this early stage, can you give an example of how quality of life, maybe an approach to alts, will be better in Dragonflight than in Shadowlands?
Thank you, bro. Yes!
Sure. I think it's from the start thinking about what should be account wide, and the answer is nearly everything except getting gear from dungeons, from quests, the actual item level and power of your character that is your journey. But we want to make playing through, linear narrative.
They've been watching the stream, boys.
You do it. We want to make sure that access to content, that things like utility, including, for example, aspects of the dragon riding system.
Yep.
If you are upgrading and improving your dragon riding such that you can more ably traverse the Dragon Isles, redoing that on other characters is not going to be a satisfying experience. It's just going to feel bad that you don't have access to, or you're somehow hindered compared to the experience on your main. I think we're just constantly asking the question of how this is going to feel the second, third, fourth time through, how this is going to feel if it's coming along months down the line.
True.
And solving those problems from the start instead of waiting to do it reactively.
So I hope you don't mind me pressuring on this, but when it comes to Dragon
That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Would that be an absolute across account progress, or would there just be elements of it that found its way across?
So I mean, there's still questions for us to figure out on our end.
Of course.
Philosophically, I think there's obviously going to be some quests that you may have to do to unlock the system the very first time you come on a second character.
That's
but
fair.
Beyond that, if on your main your dragon can fly for longer and go farther and has access to an extra active ability, we wouldn't want to make you re-earn those things. On your alts.
Thank you. That's what I want.
Cosmetic customizations.
Yes.
For your Drake, we wouldn't want to make you re-earn those things on your alts. I think really the starting point for everything, other than just pure power from gear,
we can't stop winning.
It should be something that you do as a player, and then if you want to repeat that content on other characters, fine, but you shouldn't have to.
That's awesome. I know a lot of people will be incredibly happy to hear that. And will that be in place from the very start rather than something that comes in later patches?
That is the goal, yes. I mean, I think that's what this shift in philosophy means, right? This isn't about, okay, frankly, suffer for a few months and then
yes,
we'll hear feedback and
yes,
we want to make sure that we know people are
holy
going to be playing
shit,
literally week 1 of the expansion, right? Many people are going to get their first character to 70, do some stuff, and then a day later start leveling their next one, and that experience should be the alt-friendly one that we envision from the start.
Oh my god, what is this?
Brilliant, thank you. And I'm going to skip around different subjects a little bit here just to get you both involved all the time. I want to talk some Dracthyr just for a moment, like the new playable race and class. And we know that they have their own starting area on the Dragon Isles. Steve, can you tell us anything about like the story and the history that the Dracthyr are going to go through in that starting area?
Yeah, I was curious about this too.
Yeah, we're coming into this Dracthyr race as you're playing them.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of come into a mystery. So the thing is, you're awakening after being in stasis for you don't know how long. And this long stasis has kind of wreaked havoc on your memory as a Dracthyr. And all you know is you're in kind of this creche that is your barracks. And you know that you have friends in here, and you know that they're in trouble. And so you work through this experience of trying to help your friends, reawaken them, get out and just figure out what's been happening, what caused this. And as you're going through this experience, you're encountering all these changes, and you realize that you've been asleep for a very long time.
So it's like Idiocracy.
So the Dracthyr experience is really one of discovery, of finding what happened to you, what befell your leader, Neltharion, who was the guy who made you. And for those of you who don't know, Neltharion, who eventually became Deathwing, at one time he was just the Earth Warder. He was one of the aspects, and he was charged with protecting the land.
Supposed to be a good boy.
And so you find out that he made you to be a soldier, to be this ideal warrior against some threat that was coming. And through the course of this experience, without giving in-depth spoilers, you will find out what that threat was, and that it's reawakening again, just like you. And the fact that you're awakening now is tied into that threat that's rising.
That's interesting.
So you'll get this experience of kind of learning your history, learning what's happened to you, but leaving a lot of mysteries to explore over the course of questing. So you get this cool starter experience.
Deathwing soldiers.
That is very evocative and tease up a lot of history. And then through the course of questing, if you're playing a Dracthyr, you'll have little moments throughout the kind of level up and through some of our max level campaign chapters where you'll find out some more little bits and keep putting the history together. And it's going to be really fun to see how the dragons react to you, because they didn't know about you. Even Alex Straza didn't know that the Dracthyr existed. So that's going to be a process of both sides getting to know one another. It's a really cool story. The Dracthyr are awesome and fun to play. And I think the Forbidden Reach, the area that you'll start in for your experience, is a really cool place that's very evocative of the Dragon Isles experience.
Okay, cool.
We've heard a lot about the zones on the Dragon Isles, and the Forbidden Reach is the one we've heard the least about. But a lot of emphasis has been put on the size of them and how they're these grand, like sweeping zones that you can swoop and fly around, and how they'll be utilized with like areas that are kind of focused on leveling and areas that are kind of more end game areas within the zone. Are you going to utilize the starting area for the Dracthyr for anything else in the game? Will it be just a starting area for them, or will other players find their way to it over the course of the expansion?
Be like the goblins.
No, it's definitely a place that we'll be coming back to. We're deciding where that best fits in the story, whether it's max level or in upcoming content, but it's definitely a place that has more mysteries left in it.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. It's a good idea.
So there's a lot of throwaway content. It's a great space, and will be fun to adventure in later in the game.
So would it be fair to say it's not just a starting zone, it will kind of play a part in the wider expansion as well?
I think it's fair to say it's part of the world, right? I think, analogies to how the Vault of the Wardens and that Isle worked in Legion are valid. I mean, if you are a Dracthyr, your journey begins here and your story begins here.
Right.
But for everyone else in Azeroth, this is a place that's full of mysteries that will be interesting to visit down the line and delve into the aftermath.
Okay. Awesome. And sorry for like the flip-flopping that we're going to do on subjects here, but
that's cool.
I miss you when you're not talking for a while, and I want to kind of like spread it out a little bit. going back to kind of quality of life changes and sort of account-wide things. There's going to be a change with reputation, we understand, when it comes to Dragonflight, and it's going to be based more on what we'd recognize as a renown system at the moment.
Gonna be
would you like to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's another example of evolution of some of our evergreen systems. I wouldn't call this like a full-blown revamp, but I think it's us taking a step back and looking at how we present reputation, which hasn't really changed since 2004. It's
gotten very stale since WoD.
Fixed thresholds that go up,
extremely
double,
stale.
3,000, 6,000, 12,000, etc. If you want to know what a reputation gives you, sometimes it's buried in achievements. Sometimes you have to find a quartermaster and look through their list of stuff.
Right.
And I think one of the things we did really like about how Covenants played out in Shadowlands was just the visual UI of the renown track and understanding your progression towards stuff. And while we don't plan for reputations, and I think definitively reputations in Dragonflight will not give you the sort of, alternate progression like soulbind levels or whatever that they did in Shadowlands. Good. I think it is a very elegant way of laying out the rewards that you have to look forward to. Everything from cosmetics, unlocks of additional content, items which
so they're changing the UI, basically.
Auxiliary powers, core power for endgame outdoor world players, and so forth. And I think we have what we're calling, this is maybe not a final name, but just shorthand internally, major factions. Not every reputation will work this way, but there are some major factions that we'll encounter in the Dragon Isles. And as we aid them and as we work on their behalf, we'll be progressing along this track with a hopefully just clearer and all-around more elegant reward progression.
Please ask if they're account-wide, bro.
And one of the nice, just to add on, one of the nice things about that is that each of those major factions kind of stands on their own.
That's smart.
So,
I think that's a good idea.
Covenants that you kind of picked one and that was your path.
That's a good idea.
You can dive in and out of, so you
can
choose if you want to focus on one, focus on another one, switch around, play lots of things. It's just gives you more choices as a player of what kind of what path you want to engage with and which reputations really are most appealing to you for a particular character.
Sure. So is it the case that there's a set number of world quests or kind of daily quests or sort of weekly quests that are available, and you choose which kind of faction you want to do those for and improve your reputation with? Or is it possible to increase your reputation with all the factions kind of equally at the same time?
I think that's one of those things that, again, details aren't 100% set in stone.
Both options will make people mad. There's no perfect solution to this.
Is much more flexibility, and I think part of why
Mop had this problem
Covenants and
at the beginning.
Progression and Covenants were so rigidly time gated.
Yeah,
that it was your core.
Y'all remember that?
It was your soulbind tree traversal, and so if we let you just say, "Hey, I want to binge for a weekend and do a bunch of stuff," well, that would have become the mandatory way for every competitive player to play. But in a world where this is more about, unlocking new bits of story, content,
cosmetic,
other types of more open-ended progression, I think we can be much more flexible.
I think that's awesome. It's really good to hear you say that there's story connected to those unlocks as well. You know what I'm going to have to ask you, though, don't you? Is it account-wide, that progress?
So that's a good question, and I think details of that are something, again, it's going to depend. I think, again, philosophically, if you've unlocked a cosmetic reward on one character, that should be available across your account.
He's saying
no. Access to a new set of quests or a new repeatable event in the outdoor world, that should be available across your account. Might there be things that we put in this track? Certainly, if you earn a helm that is an eye level, 300 whatever helm, no, that won't be available across your account, right? So that's the stuff we have to figure out.
That kind of makes sense.
Adhere to the general philosophies that.
I guess that kind of makes sense.
I'm surprisingly happy to hear that answer. I think that's a really good answer. Thank you. I'm really glad that I put on some clothes for this. I didn't have to. No one would have known. Awesome. So that's really good to hear. And
surveying
with that kind of progression. And is there any kind of systems that you thought really worked in Shadowlands that you're going to move over into Dragonflight? People are thinking like creation catalysts, stuff like that.
I think. That's one of them, though. I think we probably don't want to get into the habit of having to reinvent a new Foozle in every zone with some magical currency that's there just to craft tier sets or whatever from that tier.
Smart. Yeah.
We're still figuring out exactly how this will work, but I think that professions are actually probably a really good long-term home for that sort of device, where, over the course of a tier, after the first few weeks of collecting and trying to piece your set together, long-term, what if you could take your plate helm that you earned from that raid or from a mythic dungeon and take it to a skilled blacksmith with a reagent who can then make that into a set helm? That's the sort of thing that we'd love to carry forward. I think making tier sets accessible to a variety of playstyles, and also having, as we mentioned earlier, kind of pre-planning that catch-up mechanism / RNG backstop. That can,
they have this now with Creation Catalyst.
Partway through the tier.
You understand that, right?
I'm really happy with.
That's really good. I think the tier solution in this tier is great.
Is there going to be a mission table?
No current plans for a mission table, no.
The internet, just an intake of breath there.
There we go.
Steve, when it comes to the story of the expansion, it's been said that you planned the story of Shadowlands to be a story in 3 acts. Do you know where the story of Dragonflight ends up right now, and are you kind of working towards it, or are you sort of freewheeling a bit more? Not that there's a wrong answer, just interested in your process.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I kind of work as a storyteller, like, I like to know where something's going. So
you have to. You have to know where it's going.
We talk a lot about story on this team. I have multiple meetings a week with multiple people, and we talk a lot about, like, how we want this to end. What kind of feeling do we want to evoke in people when this expansion comes to a conclusion? And so we have this pretty epic ending that I think will feel really good for players, that will involve these characters that we've been adventuring alongside throughout the story. So yeah, we have that story, but there's also a lot of freedom along the way in terms of, like, you don't want to be so overly prescriptive with what you're doing that you shut yourself off from opportunities. This is something that we talk about in voice sessions all the time with actors, right? Like, we write these lines, but we don't want to tell them how to say them, because the magic comes from how an actor interprets what those words are. And
that didn't work with Lost Ark.
When you have this whole team of really talented people, really talented quest designers, narrative designers, content designers, systems, all this stuff that comes together, you want to let those folks kind of take the building blocks that you hand them and see what's going to come of that. And so while you drive towards certain things and you have these key moments in mind and this key progression for the story, you want that flexibility in there to discover things that you didn't even anticipate. And that's the real joy, is when I'm talking with some designer who's, like, talking about a quest line that they want to build, and something rises out of that's just magical, that I never would have thought of, but it brings so much to this kind of tapestry of the game. That's just super exciting. So that's the stage we're at now, is we've got quest people.
That's a relatively fair answer.
Narrative people, all building stuff in this world, and it's like planting seeds that grow right before your eyes. So it's a really great experience, and I think
I didn't like the voice actor thing.
It should presumably you're kind of looking very much at the initial kind of leveling and story experience of the Dragon Isles at the moment. Do you have, like, a certain way you want players to feel? Like, if you had to sum up what you wanted to make players feel in that initial kind of leveling process, for example, through the Isles, what would it be?
Yeah, we want players to feel a sense of optimism and hope, that there's so much potential in the future of the Dragon Isles and the future of Dragonkind and all these characters that are wrapped up in this storyline. And it makes you care about who you're adventuring alongside, and you care about this place because it's so steeped in the mystique, the mythology of dragons, and you get to learn, not just what they fight for, but what they care about.
What about the sword?
What drives each of the flights? What is in their hearts and their bond to this world and to each other. So it's really about wanting to give that experience to the player, feeling connected to these characters and to this place.
Awesome. And would you say the odds are good that we'll stay on the Dragon Isles for the entirety of the expansion, or would you be surprised if we kind of went elsewhere?
There's no way he's going to answer that.
Well, now you're asking very specific.
Yeah, there's no way.
Thematically, this expansion is about the dragons and the threats they face and the goals they have, and what we and other heroes of Azeroth are doing to help them.
Yeah, nice try,
of,
Charlie. Yes,
some
nice
dragons
try.
that might have ill intent of trying to stop them. So it is very much rooted in the dragons. We're not, the story always touches on lots of things because WoW is a big game and the story is very big. So there's lots of room for little side stories and things like that. But the main storyline is about the dragons, about the dragon aspects and what their fate is and the kind of destiny that they're weaving.
Okay.
That's awesome. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. I'd like to go back to just sort of some in-game things at the moment. There's been a lot of talk about Mythic Plus and the Mythic Plus seasons and the distribution of the dungeons over Mythic Plus in seasons 1 and 2 in particular. And it being widely reported that in season 1 we'll have 4 of the presumably 8 new dungeons from Dragonflight, combined with 4 time-walking dungeons, and then again vice versa in season 2.
I think that's a good idea.
I think there's like a concern in the community that the time-walking Mythic Plus dungeons included will be ones that we've kind of been playing a lot recently. Is there a desire in the team to use older dungeons that haven't been used as Mythic Plus before to fill those gaps?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think certainly Shadowlands and even I think Battle for Azeroth dungeons are all.
They'll probably stop at Miss
purposes. I think they're far too recent.
I don't expect anything before that.
I think a lot of where we're starting to look is
CatDany.
Mists of Pandaria had some fun dungeons that had challenge mode versions, but never Mythic Plus.
Yeah,
and I also I don't know that I would describe it as literally time walking because I think we're open to making some tweaks to the dungeons to support modern
They have to
gameplay
change the
and Mythic
design
Plus as needed. But I mean, the idea here really is to set ourselves up and to set players up for long-term variety over the course of the expansion. And each new Mythic Plus season not just being some slight tweak to routing based on the new seasonal affix of a dungeon you've already run 100 times, but rather a whole new puzzle to solve. And, I mean, again, honestly, I would love to be able to say that we could create 8 new dungeons every few months. That is not something we're able to do. One day maybe, but that's not something we're able to do today.
That's fair.
And so by mixing up
I think adding in old ones is a good idea.
And it hopefully continue to add new dungeons over the course of the expansion. That's something that we're going to be able to deliver where both itemization-wise and gameplay-wise, every season is a fresh experience the same way Raiders have a fresh experience every season. You shouldn't have to refarm the same trinket from the same dungeon every 5 or 6 months.
I really like the intent behind that. I think sort of refarming old gear every season, or the same gear every season, is one of the major things that is fatiguing about Mythic Plus. Can you see yourself going all the way back to classic dungeons?
That's unlikely.
There's no way.
Maybe. Certainly, in a world where we're completely reworking or reimagining some older dungeons as we did in some later expansions, that version could hold up. But I think both in terms of visual fidelity and just mechanical complexity,
they're too easy.
Those dungeons I think wouldn't be suitable for modern gameplay. I think internally the team probably draws the bar at Mists of Pandaria and onwards.
I thought
in terms of what still feels consistent with how we design dungeons today. That's not to say that we couldn't go earlier than that, but we would also rework the dungeon significantly if we did so.
Please do Cata Heroics.
Cool. Sounds like fun. Like I say, these questions come from the community, so I want to kind of do a relatively quick fire bunch on the Drakthir, just to get some kind of information out there that people have been wondering about. Obviously, in combat form, they're using their claws and their wings and their tails and their jaws and all sorts, and that's one thing. But obviously, they will have weapons equipped. Do we know what kind of loadouts they're looking at yet? Are they using int staves? Are they using agility maces? What's going on?
So I think they're as a caster class,
intellect, right?
Yes, and healer, they're definitely an intellect class, and both specializations are that. In terms of weapons,
both.
This again, all subject to change, but I think initial
fist
thoughts
weapons
are probably what shamans can use minus shields plus swords, if that makes sense. So like dagger, fist weapon, mace, staves.
Okay, that's good.
Axes, and
that's good.
That's the current thinking.
Awesome. And when it comes to kind of like older content and going back as a Drakthir, how will that work? Particularly in terms of Mage Tower. Will they be able to go into the Mage Tower?
No way.
That is unlikely, at least initially. I think there are certain things that we will update. I know everyone is eagerly waiting to see what the Nefarian
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Nefarian encounters this mysterious Drakthir creature.
Yeah.
And I think we'll
yes,
make sure
of course he knew that.
Run Torghast when Torghast launches, when Dragonflight comes out, and that's still actually initially relevant content when you're level 60. I think want to make sure there's workarounds such that they can do the Legion expansion content if they want to go do that, but they're not going to get their own artifact weapon. We're not going to kind of retcon an odd story that involved Drakthir somehow fighting the Legion back then.
That's
I think
smart.
Long-term stuff like
it's a good idea.
Mage Tower we would want to explore, but that's not something that's going to be able to happen for Dragonflight launch.
Okay, that's understandable, I guess. And Steve, there's been a lot of talk about customization of the Drakthir as well. And concerns around that, but also just wanting to know more about it. Can you talk a bit more about to what extent players will be able to customize their characters?
Yeah, the art team has really done an amazing array of customizations for both the Drakthir form and the Visage form, and I believe we've got a blog post in the works where some of our artists are going to talk through some of those options in more detail, because really, even the deep dive was really
that's good. That's good. Do they have something coming for this?
Some of the things, and the game is in development, so more of those options are coming into the UI every day.
Good.
So they'll be able to give a much more in-depth kind of look at what's going to be available. But it's a super customizable both forms, and I really like the Visage form a lot because of just the variety that you'll see in those. So
yeah, we'll see.
What's the lore thinking behind that? Because obviously they use the sort of the human female-based form and the blood elf male-based form, but the facial features seem to be kind of purposely changed a little bit from that. Are they literal kind of human forms, or what's the lore behind that?
Well, the lore behind the Drakthir is that they're not made from one singular mortal race, nor one singular dragonflight, right? Like Neltharion took the best aspects of dragons, allowed them to tap into the magic of all 5 flights. And he looked at the mortal races who were very young at the time. When you think back to that period of Azeroth's history, you had Tauren, you had trolls, you had night elves rising up from the trolls.
So you can give them a big Tauren
and
dick.
Some other early races like that. And so those were really the building blocks that he drew from. And so the Drakthir represents not only a mixture of the magic of the flights, but a mixture of those traits from some of those early races. So that's why they have a distinctive appearance that's different from what the dragons did, which was to pick one particular race that they wanted to use to represent themselves in the world, and then transformed into that as their Visage form. The Drakthir come at it from a different angle.
Okay.
So they, unlike dragons, they haven't chosen their form. That's just sort of who they are.
Well, that's going to be part of the storyline, is that when you awaken, you're in your...
Sorry. I didn't touch my monitor. It turned off.
...story, where it becomes necessary, as you might imagine, to venture out into the larger world. And so that's the point where the Drakthir have to tap into that mortality that is within them and use it to present their Visage form.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And Ian,
that sounds fun.
An evoker tank spec. How likely is that, do you think, eventually?
Very unlikely, I think.
Pretty unlikely. I think that.
Yep. But black dragons, though, Ian.
Wait, what about them?
They have scales which are used in tanking shields and swords, and there's loads of black dragon
hearsay
links to kind of tanking items throughout the game. So that's one of the reasons why people are kind of, sort of coming down on the side that it's something they maybe should have.
I'm gonna say that's a tenuous logical connection. The fact that the hides of dragons can be used to make sturdy things.
I know that sounds like a question for Steve Nooser, honestly, whether that's tenuous or not. I don't know.
No, so I think really. This is a spellcaster class at its core.
I don't think they're going to.
While there are, of course, specialization-specific abilities.
Objection.
The core abilities that are shared across both specs, lots of them have cast times. All of that doesn't lend itself well to being in melee range, directly being punched by an enemy. And as any tank can attest, anything that has a cast time is just miserable. That's not just the fantasy of what this class is about. Options for them going forward, I think we're certainly, while I have 2 specializations, I don't want to close the door to them ever getting a third.
That's smart.
But I don't know that tank is the direction that we would go here in particular. Our prior hero classes have, all had tank options. We think that that's been fairly well covered over the years. We'd like to give range DPS some love this time.
How about 2 range DPS
and kind of
specs?
Hinting back to something we were talking about earlier, I'm assuming they're not getting a class hall in Legion or an artifact weapon?
Correct. And I think some of this is,
yeah, you can't do that, really.
Canonically, Drakthir were not around in Azeroth back then. They were not known to the races of the world during Legion, and so the Legion story doesn't really reflect their presence.
I think that's fair. That's smart.
Awesome. And I'm glad you brought up Chromie Time, actually, because that's one of our community questions on this list. Are you planning any more alterations to Chromie Time aside from just letting it scale to whatever the new kind, or
BWL,
whatever just below the new max is every expansion? Do you think that's a system that is like working at the moment, or do you have any planned kind of changes or iterations for it?
Overall, I think it's working. I think the intent is to roll Shadowlands into it and have that for alt be one of an array of options alongside other expansions that you can use to level a new character from 10 to 58 or 60 to jump into Dragonflight. Down the line, I think, while for now BFA remains the default experience for true new players who venture off from Stormwind and Orgrimmar into that expansion, that may be something we update down the line.
Is that confirmation? I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's just that's been something that we've had sort of conflicting reports on in some dev interviews. It is definitely staying as BFA for new players.
Definitely staying as BFA. And I think that's conceptually, Shadowlands is a challenging new player expansion. I think trying to sell the idea of congratulations, you've escaped Exile's reach as one of the survivors. Now we need you to go into Super Hell with Lady Jaina and save the world. That's a bit of a rapid escalation.
That's true.
Versus venture off with our diplomatic force to Kultiras/Zandalar.
So basically,
and, work on behalf of your faction. That feels like
Shadowlands didn't happen. Awesome. It didn't happen.
And is there like any plans to the training dungeon on Exile's Reach works really, really well, where you go in with sort of computer controlled sort of other members of your party in a dungeon at the end there. Is that something you might expand into the leveling experience for solo players?
What sword? What jailer? What arbiter? What do you mean?
It's something we're definitely open to expanding. I think there's just a bunch of challenges. That dungeon was built with that in mind, and I think getting to a point where AI NPCs could actually run, let alone tank or heal, one of our kind of mainstream dungeons, even the BFA ones that was designed with mechanics that were only built for real players, is that's a much more challenging thing to accomplish in a way that doesn't end up being really frustrating. Because I think the second your NPC companion wipes your group, you're not really thankful that you have that instead of a real player.
He's talking about the trust system, kind of.
Gave it to you. So,
and you can't kick them. Yeah. That's the thing. You can't kick them out.
I've been kicked by them though. Weirdly, so strange. Going back to the Dragon Isles very quickly, we've got some a bunch of questions about dragon riding that I want to get to in just a second. But just before we do, I'd like to touch on some story stuff again. We've had talk about Khadgar coming back as a main character in Dragon Isles, or certainly a prominent character.
What's up with that?
Can you give us any hints or information on other characters that we might know or not know that we'll be spending a lot of time with in the expansion?
Well, yeah, the one of the fun things that we're doing this time is because we looked at the instigating events of what takes us to the Dragon Isles as a non-dragon race. What's pulling us there, and obviously we want to help our friends the dragons. But this isn't, like say Pandaria, where you had Alliance and Horde who were going in also to make a land grab, like to prevent your rival from obtaining control of this new place.
Yeah, it's
that's
cooperative.
Not what we're doing here in Dragonflight. And so that's why we chose the Explorers League and the Reliquary to join forces and make this feel like a true expedition, not a military strike. And so because of that gives us access to some other characters, some members of those groups that don't often get the spotlight. So there'll be some fun there.
We're going to get Bran Bronzebeard again?
We'll get to know some characters that they're not necessarily familiar with. But, there will be some of our major heroes that will make appearances throughout the storyline. But we really did want to focus mainly on the dragons and their storyline.
Bran's his brother.
We built so many things up over the years with, say, Rathian, where, he's been looking for this place. He's been wrestling with his own desires to lead a renewed Black Dragonflight, but yet the doubts that he has about his origins and the legacy of his father, and all of the aspects have questions like that are really interesting to explore. So we wanted to make them the focus of a lot of that the narrative weight of storytelling, but we have other characters coming in that also want to adventure alongside in the Dragon Isles with us.
Will we be seeing any of Kalia Menethil?
Well, how to say this without those of you who have been watching the data mines of our 925 patch know that there is something that takes place in Tirisfal Glades, and some of that may allow us to catch up with Kalia Menethil and delve into some storylines that affect the Forsaken and others who've been touched by
get them out of that city,
the magic of death and what it's done to their culture.
I want water on back.
There's definitely some stuff coming up that will be of interest.
I wasn't going to ask this, but that just leads on so perfectly, so I kind of have to now.
Yeah, get them out.
Yeah, sorry, it's kind of your fault. Everything is your fault, Steve, don't you know?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's fair.
Twitter tells me.
Or mine after this, I think. But you've done such great work as a team with the customization options in Shadowlands, and a lot of like the loosening of restrictions that, for lore reasons and what have you, always use an excuse not to have certain customizations. What is stopping Dark Ranger customizations?
Well, when we generally when we put out new customizations, think back to like what we did with the Night Elves in 8.1 when
they started listening to My Chemical Romance
upon the power of the Night Warrior, and then if you played through that storyline, then you've got access to some new customization options. So we like to do it when it's thematic for a particular case. Now, obviously, we don't do it every time. It's a kind of a rare and special thing. But what I would say is that when there is a right opportunity for something like that's absolutely something that we'd consider. And I won't go into any more details than that.
Okay. I think that's very fair. I'd like to ask you about dragon riding, if that's okay, and particularly some sort of just clarifications on some of the things I think some of the community, myself included, are a little bit confused about. Can you, Ian, just explain for the uninitiated what the difference between dragon riding and just flight as we recognize it now is?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Sure. So, I mean, flight as it has existed since Burning Crusade is effectively swimming through the air. It treats the air as you would treat water in our game, and you can move faster in it. There's no
that's pretty much true.
Or gravity, and you can just move around at a fixed rate. I think a lot of what we've said about flying over the years does, I think, still hold in terms of its potential to shrink the world, to eliminate a feeling of danger or exploration when you can fly right over the enemy citadel before you've ever been there and skip past guards and other barriers. You lose a little bit of something of taking in a place. But long term, of course, we understand that convenience is paramount.
Yeah.
You just want to get around. You want to do your quests. You want to farm your stuff. You want to collect things. You want to herb, mine, and we want flying to be there for you. So the pattern that we've of course fallen into is unlocking flying some number of months into a new expansion. I think that's still, that long-term unrestricted flight is still the plan for Dragonflight, and the ability to use all of your mounts. We don't want to make, want to make your
so it's going to happen.
Gather dust on the shelf, but at launch, we want to do something different and exciting this time around. That isn't just, all right, you're stuck on the ground for X months, because it's an expansion about dragons. It's an expansion about the home of dragons, and so while within the Dragon Isles, very early on, I think in the first or second zone, as you're leveling up, literally the first day of the expansion, you will gain the trust of a dragon companion that is native to the Dragon Isles.
How to train your dragon.
Whom you can call within the Dragon Isles. This Drake is still a fledgling flyer of sorts and has limited stamina initially, but also has the ability to navigate in a much more dynamic, exciting way than the flying that we've known before.
Okay.
And so that means, as we've seen in
all right, we'll see how this goes.
Video clips, momentum, gathering speed as you dive towards the ground,
his stamina,
using that to carry you forward.
You have to pay for refills on the store.
Sort of unlimited, unrestricted flight. There is a stamina bar that will be depleted as you're gaining altitude or as you're doing special moves, and the ability to, as you become a more skilled dragon rider, as your bond with your Drake grows, increase and loosen those restrictions and get around more and more frequently and more easily. But long term, standard flying is still the plan. We think this is going to be a much better experience, a much more exciting experience
New idea.
Week one.
Yep. All right. Let's see the new idea.
Will standard flying,
sounds good.
As in you can now fly your flying mounts around the Dragon Isles, be something that is definitely kind of opened up in the expansion?
Then why would people do dragon riding?
Yes. I think again, as mentioned, we understand players have prized collections of hundreds of mounts.
Yes.
That they have, are very attached to.
Yes.
We don't want to create an expansion where you're never going to be able to use those. It's just not part of the day one experience.
And from your kind of design point of view, the kind of what we've seen in the footage of swooping and what I imagine is very much kind of the later stage, maybe even like the end stage of dragon flying, where you're very much being like Alex Straza in the opening cinematic. Do you have a time frame for when you think players will get to that point?
Like a month, right?
Honestly, a lot of that stuff that you're seeing should be the very early experience. I think it should feel fun and exciting and awesome from minute one.
Thank God.
But
yes,
have some time.
Of course, it has
how
to.
How long you can do that for? Things like that.
It fucking has to.
The intent is not to give you an experience that feels lame, and then have you work to make it feel good. It should feel good from the start, and then only get better from there.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so relatively soon. And in terms of how your dragon is leveled up, is that through completing quests generally, or is it kind of like a currency that you grind out, or an experience bar, or is there a plan for that at the moment?
That is to be decided. I think philosophically we want to be flexible with that. Again, recognizing while this isn't a power system, it is still a core system that players of all play styles will want to do. And if we tie progression within the system to one specific type of content, then if you don't like that type of content, you don't like the system, and that hurts WoW as a whole for you.
Yes.
And so that's something we're gonna, we want to see how this is actually playing out, and stay flexible with based on feedback over the course of beta.
That's smart.
Awesome.
Okay,
and
great.
In terms of best case scenario, Dragonflight is the best thing ever. It looks awesome. It looks like super engaging and really fun, and makes, best case scenario, it's going to make traversing the environment part of the gameplay loop rather than something that has to be overcome, and that's awesome. I really appreciate the design intention behind it. And with that in mind, people are going to want to use it outside of Dragon Isles if it's that much fun. Is that something that you plan to allow?
That would be great.
Long term, that's certainly a possibility. I think this is a system that's initially built
for
Dragon Isles, and the environment is built for this system. But as with anything,
that's good.
I would say this is unlike most of our other evergreen improvements. This is an expansion-specific feature, but like nearly every expansion-specific feature, that is very subject to change based on feedback. Like Mythic Plus was originally a Legion feature, and then turns out everyone was like, nope, we want this going forward. We made that happen. So I think that's something where we don't want to make it.
That's as good of an answer as I could imagine.
It's very much a possibility.
Yeah, borrowed dragons.
Awesome. I'm going to come back to an element of that in just a moment, but I just want to ask Steve, because I miss you. I'm thinking a lot about dragons and our experience with dragons, and Syndragosa being apparently quite a prominent character in the upcoming expansion. But then I think I've got a Death Knight, and I kind of killed all her kids. And is that something that she's going to hold against me?
Well, the Syndragosa that you will be interacting with through the course of Dragon Isles is...
I meant Alex Straza. I'm so sorry. I misspoke there.
Okay. All right. Okay. Alex Straza...
I was about to say.
Alex Straza's seen a lot
of shit,
of carnage done to dragons, both from other dragons and from the mortal races of the world. She is an optimistic person. She is a person who is looking towards the future of her kind.
Leaked? I don't think it was a leak.
Things, but she will definitely acknowledge some of the hard feelings towards some of those quests. And I think that if you played a Death Knight and engaged with some of that content, then she might have some distinctive things to say to you that she wouldn't necessarily say to the random.
You'd have her slap the Death Knights.
So
just fuck you.
We really like doing that kind of conditional quest text. That if you've got a particular history that's relevant to a character, that they call that out. And so we're being mindful of that in the Dragon Isles with Alex Straza and other characters as well.
And with cross-faction play being something that comes into play in the next expansion, are you planning on including that in the storyline at all, making it sort of something that's mentioned by the players and
that's
factions?
the whole thing of the
Is it going to be the basis
League
of any story?
and the Reliquary? It's the whole thing.
We feel like the armistice that was signed at the end of Battle for Azeroth was kind of the teeing up point for where this is now. And so when you kick off the expansion, and this takes place, some of this will be further expanded in our pre-patch content, but we'll definitely catch players up and remind them of kind of the state of where the factions are at, that this is a cooperative venture that they're going into to help the dragons and explore the Dragon Isles. And so we'll acknowledge the fact that this isn't everything's forgotten, and we're all just best friends now. There's varying levels of resentments and distrustfulness. You saw some of that in the aftermath of the
at the Arbiter's platform,
the final chapter 8.
Again, Greymane was mad.
Eternity's End. You saw some of those feelings if you talk to Greymane and Lorthamar. You see that there's a lot of history that
they still mad,
there. And so that will be acknowledged. But again, it is a period of kind of hopefulness and optimism. So we'll get to see some of these characters working together that in the past it would have been unthinkable for these rivals to go side by side and work towards a shared goal.
I would say that in some ways, really, this is less about the narrative adapting to the new mechanic. I think this is more the mechanic is an adaptation to the way the narrative has already been for years. Really, in everything except the heart of Battle for Azeroth. But even even there was still cooperation between Thrall and Jaina and others.
That's true.
We're just acknowledging the situational cooperation to overcome common threats that has been a hallmark of Warcraft throughout its history.
I mean, even in Warcraft 3, right? Last night,
and with that in mind, will cross-faction guilds be something that could happen?
It's probably a maybe, right?
It's something that could happen.
Yeah.
There are a significant number of technical challenges, and I think part of how we're rolling out this feature, there's a reason why it's called cross-faction instances and not cross-faction play. It's because there's 17 years of game that was built with a lot of assumptions about what factions
the coding.
Do
the coding is fucked. Yes, I get it.
And so there's a lot to unravel there. But I think we're taking a step down this path, and I think it's probably not going to be the only step. But that's something where we'll both be guided by the community and our internal progress in engineering terms.
Fair. And we don't have loads of time left, so I really want to talk to you about endgame. You've talked, and I think the community was really happy to hear about, the lack of kind of borrowed power, is how you would term it, I suppose. But that's something that the endgame of WoW has been so based on in recent expansions.
Yeah.
How do you feel? What shape do you see the endgame taking for like day-to-day play for a player logging in?
I think that honestly, in a lot of ways, Eternity's End and Zereth Mortis are pretty close to that already. We didn't carry forward most of the Shadowlands systems. There weren't new Soulbind levels for you to go earn by raising your renown further or whatever else.
That's true.
There's gear. There is outdoor progression. There's some universal currencies that you're using to further your shared goals there. And I think that has felt pretty good. That's certainly I think what we've heard from
most people have liked
players.
Zereth Mortis.
And that's the foundation.
Yeah, it's been received, I think, overall positive
in terms of the range of factions.
Mostly positively.
It's not just the cipher system is the only thing, but rather a half dozen things that you can choose among with different goals that complement our core of raid, dungeon, PvP gameplay for those who are focused on that. But I think we also want to make sure that the outdoor world experience stands on its own for players for whom that is the game they love and the game they most enjoy, and they're not interested in pushing Mythic Plus or whatever else. And I think some of the gear progression
that's what matters a lot.
The cipher system in Zereth Mortis, access to tier sets,
content for non-raiders
forward into the Dragonflight endgame from the start.
Would you combine those with a new sort of iteration of the Great Vault? Is the Great Vault something that's going to come back next expansion?
I hope so.
Yes, the Great Vault is something we're carrying forward.
Good.
There may be some tweaks to it. I think no major changes
or
overhaul to it. I think incrementally it's felt like a clear improvement upon the the single item chest from Legion and BFA. I think the improved constellation package for fallback if you don't have something you want has been working out fairly well in the last few weeks since we added socketers and other items to that range of options. But yeah, I think that's largely, there'll be a new version of it. It's not the literal Ouroboros Great Vault, maybe a dragon horde of some sort in the city of Valdrakken at the top of the Dragon Isles.
Okay, that sounds fine.
It'll be coming back.
Awesome. I have to address some rumors that have been going around the community from sources. You know how it is, that there might be a new allied race introduced at some point in this expansion early on.
I'm not going to give you any answer about that.
We don't.
I'm asking about Tuskar. I'm asking about Tuskar. That's what I'm asking about. But it doesn't have to be. But I mean, it should be. But it doesn't have to be.
Do it, Ian.
That would be impossible to balance, though, right? Because I think if we let you play something that's just
they balance perfectly. They've got a low center of gravity.
No, exactly. But no, that's like letting you play a Naru or play a Titan. Like you can't just put, a supernatural power that's unstoppable alongside a mere human and expect the world to have any sense of cohesion. So
yeah,
maybe if we can get past that issue someday, but not right now.
Tell that to Illidan.
You've done so well in this Q&A, honestly, and I think you've made a lot of friends. But I think you've just blown it right at the very end there. It sounds like you're saying there aren't playable Tuskar. So I'm going to move on from that. That's fine. Like, I don't think you've said no yet, so I'm gonna move on. Just to step away very quickly before we finish, we have had news that the Exploring Northrend book is kind of in the works and will be coming out. Steve, do you have anything you'd like to tell us about that?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's another in the ongoing saga of kind of this fictional exploration of the world and kind of catching up on some things that have changed since the expansion content where we delved into it. So it's this time we kind of adventure alongside some of the Bronzebeard brothers. So they all have ties to Northrend. We got to go into Titan Vaults alongside Bran. We've got Myrddin was tied in with Frostmourne and the Arthas storyline, and of course Magni has ties to lots of Titan stuff that's there. So they made kind of ideal guides going through and seeing some of this land through their eyes. So it's going to be a really fun, freewheeling sort of book that just catches up on a fan favorite location.
Awesome. I have to ask, there was kind of some controversy with the last book, the Kalimdor book.
People didn't
in terms of some elements of the community finding some tropes and what have you.
It was just written badly.
Sort of not the best thought out. Was that something you as the team were aware of?
Well, the community certainly had called out some valid points there and gave us a lot to think about. And we always strive to do better with every iteration of what we do. And so we're bearing those lessons in mind as we're working on the Northrend book and other books.
That's fair.
We've done a lot lately. It's been a time of introspection for lots of reasons. And
I wonder what
one
those
of the
are.
things that I've been really proud that the team has been doing is really trying to get better about and learn more about the way we represent cultures in our world, representations of that, and make sure that we're doing it the right way. So, for example, as we've been delving into Tuskar stories, we met with some of the Inuit people and talked to them and got their perspective on what is good representation? Like how deep do we go with some of these ties to real world cultures in a way that is respectful and feels good? And so that's something
that's actually a really good answer. That's actually a good answer.
Our books and publications.
Yeah.
And it's just something we really want to be respectful and mindful of those things so that we don't find ourselves in those situations again.
Talk to the people.
I
make sure
knew
it's
I could ask you that
up.
because I thought you'd have a good answer.
Yeah, that's
for
actually
it,
a good answer.
So thank you for that. And we're going to hard stop it in 30 seconds time. But I have one last question for Ian. And it's a translation issue. There was a German interview you did for Buffed where there's been a little bit of confusion as to what you actually said in terms of how far along this expansion is. Did you say that it's quite far along, or did you say that it's got quite far to go?
I think it's quite far along. I mean, we have Alpha is coming soon. We have signups posted. There's a whole lot to show off and experience all around there. So soon TM, but
Sounds
also
good
soon
to me.
without the TM.
Awesome. Guys, there have been some really, really interesting answers to these questions today. I really appreciate you taking them straight from the community like this. It's been a really interesting way of kind of asking questions and getting answers. It's been lovely sitting here in my pants. I went to the bathroom at some point. I went out for a jog halfway through. I watched, some movie. It's been brilliant. It's been like so much nicer than doing BlizzCon. So we should do this again sometime. And I know that a lot of the answers that you've given are going to be celebrated in the community, so thank you for that, and thank you for your time, and I think we'll end it there. Is there anything else that you'd like to finish off on in terms of Dragonflight?
Honestly, just thank you all for the great questions. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for your trust, and we hope to live up to it, and we have a lot more information to share.
To say.
Can't wait to welcome you into the world formally soon, and let's make a great game together.
Yeah.
The team is having a great time working on this expansion. It's got us really excited, and I think that excitement will carry over once you come into this world as well. So looking forward to it, and thanks everybody, and thanks for the great questions.
You've got me incredibly hyped, and as everyone knows, that's a really difficult thing to do. So thank you so much, and we're going to call it there. Thank you everyone for joining us.
All right. Well, that went pretty well. I actually think that it did. I feel like the interview was good, everything like that. Now, I'd love to have... I would love to have this happen on Twitch. I think it would be better on Twitch so we can actually see the people that are talking about like what's going on. But I feel like in general, this was it was a good interview. I think Taliesin did a good job. And I think he asked a lot of questions that a lot of us were wondering. There were some questions, however, that he didn't get to that I know a lot of people were wondering. And I'll be asking Ian about those tomorrow. That's the announcement. Tomorrow, I'm actually doing an interview with Ian. It's not a long one. I'm not going to have a whole lot of time, but we're going to sit down and we're going to ask the questions. And yes, I'm going to ask him about the fucking sword. That's right. So yes, guys, we've broken through. It is happening tomorrow. It's gonna be at like I think it's like 3 or 3:30 or something like that. And so yes, I'm interviewing him. And the thing is, like, if this one goes well, we'll probably do it again, man. Like I'm excited. And already question answered about the sword though. Well, I've got a follow up for that one. That's what it is. Yeah, we got him, boys. We actually got a voice or video. I'm not really sure. Actually, I have no idea. I think that we'll probably figure it out tonight. I think it's going to be video too, because it's like I think it's like a Zoom thing. I'm not 100% sure, but we'll figure it out tonight and then go for there. And that's it. Best behavior chat, no exceptions. I think it's going to be about the same time we do all craft. So like for me right now, it's 12, and so it's going to be somewhere around there. And so, yeah, like right 3, somewhere around 3 or so. So I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to be great. Former Red Claw with the 10 gifted community subs. I mean, this has been a very long time coming. But yes, I am actually doing an interview with Ian tomorrow. Again, it's not going to be a very long one because, they're trying to make a game. But other than that, I'm thinking, maybe hopefully later on down the line we can have a follow-up. And I think probably after that interview, we'll maybe have like a follow-up Allcraft episode. We're not really sure who we're going to get on, like maybe Preach, maybe somebody like that to just talk about the expansion, because I'm sure he's caught up with it, like compare it to like what's been going on in Final Fantasy, other games he's been playing. I think it's going to be great. Kant, thank you very much. The 10 gifted community subs, I appreciate that so much. Thank you. And wear a suit and a necktie? Yeah, sure, okay? I'm not sure what it's going to be yet. Fapping Fox with the 50 gifted community subs, I appreciate that very much. Thank you so much. And yeah, as I said, guys, I mean, I'm really excited about this, and it's going to be crazy, man. It really is.